Today, we're going to be talking about narcissistic control tactics, the narcissist's favorite control tactics. I've been thinking a lot about this because 2 weeks ago, I was featuring gaslighting, and after my discussion with Robin Stern, Dr. Robin Stern, who wrote the book, The Gaslight Effect, and then this week on the podcast on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse, we're looking at stonewalling, and then next week is coercive control. So it's just been one tactic after another that we've been highlighting. And so I'm super excited to talk to you about today about different control tactics. So how the narcissist controls you, keeps you under wraps, keeps you small, makes you feel insecure and shook up, how they really get into our mindset and change the way that we experience ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we perceive ourselves. You know, it's interesting. Someone once commented, it's like they swap out the worst parts of themselves into you. They swap it out for what they feel, and then you begin to feel it. And it really is a very paralyzing experience. I was just recalling how the coercive control started in my relationship, and it actually started really early. I realize now that basically when he met me, he had already started grooming me to be controlled, and it was subtle. You know, at first it was more like posed as questions of what kind of person was I going to be, and whether or not I was going to let him have a place in my life and make room for him. And, you know, I thought as I was in my 50s and he was only almost a 50-year-old man, I thought, well, this makes sense. This is a kind of an adult conversation. We're looking to whether or not we can share our lives, whether or not there's space for each other, whether or not we can actually blend a way of lifestyle that we have. I just saw somebody that's here in my live, and I'm so excited that they're here, and I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, and it's really hard. So Brenda, I see that you're here, and I'm so thrilled that you're here. I'm not going to try to type, and I'm just going to say hi to you. Yeah, so I realize now as I was looking back that even in the very, very first date, I was already being groomed to see if I would be how ideal of a client, or I'm sorry, how ideal of a client. That's interesting. How ideal of a victim I was going to be. And I have a suspicion that if you were to look at your relationship history, that you would find that the grooming started really early for you as well. And you know, it's common for us to love to attack victims, to say somehow we should have known better, that we should have recognized these tactics as abusive, as hostile, and that but it's hard, because here's a couple reasons why you may have been, why you got victimized. One is they are very good at picking up certain types of personalities. They're very good at identifying whether you're more of a cooperative, trusting, good-natured person. If you believe in that people are changeable, that you believe in the goodness of humanity, you know, if you're a more optimistic person that really likes to have everybody get along, and you don't really like conflict, you're primed to be targeted by this narcissistic person or toxic people. The other thing that they're looking for is they're looking for people who are in the midst of a transition. Now, we all go through transitions. At the time that I met my ex, I was newly widowed. I was out a year from losing my husband, and I had been in a long-standing relationship. And basically, I had met my late husband when I was 19. So my whole adult life had been defined by this primary adult relationship. And for the first time, really, in my life, I was on my own as an adult woman. Now, I had run a business. I had had my own counseling practice for years and years. You know, I handled the money at home. So it wasn't like I suddenly had all these new responsibilities that I'd never had before. But the experience of losing the connection with another person, the experience of going from living life as in a partnership to living life as a single person was an abrupt, really actually terrifying and shocking shift. And it also did something else that we don't talk about. We don't talk about the fact that when you've been in a really long-standing relationship, and this applies to whether you've been divorced or whether you've been widowed, or maybe your relationship just ended, but when you've been in a really long-standing relationship, you learn how to do life as part of a partnership. that your sense of self becomes a we, not so much of a me, and that your social world, your world around you also defines you in a similar way, that they also see you as part of this coupleship. So before my late husband died, and his name was Brad, people saw us as Brad and Kerry. Brad and Kerry did this, and Brad and Kerry did that. And suddenly, when I was suddenly just Kerry, I could feel the Brad part missing. And I also could feel the fact that people didn't quite know what to do with me. Did they continue to invite me out for dinner? How do we talk about, do they talk about their couple life around me? It just became awkward. So I felt like I was thrown out of my social identity and a sense of belonging, the social community. I just felt like suddenly they didn't know who I really was anymore. I didn't really know for sure who I was either. And they didn't know how to address me and how to include me. I suddenly became that fifth wheel, which meant then I wasn't really invited to a lot of things. And yeah, and I had to start looking for a new community. Now, interestingly enough, and I think some of us find this, is that where we live really helps us to have opportunities, or it hinders our opportunities. And unfortunately, I lived in an area that was fantastic for families, fantastic for couples, but it wasn't so good for singles. So there wasn't really a rich community of singles, especially in their 50s and 60s. Now, interesting not enough, I now live in one of the top single places in the world. So Austin, Texas happens to have a lot of single individuals at all ages. And so I'm finding community here a lot easier to navigate than I found where I was living before. But so back to my issue though, that narcissist and toxic people, predatory people, are looking for people who are in a vulnerable place. So they're looking for a vulnerable personality. Now, I'm not meaning that this personality has something wrong. I just mean that it's a personality that's primed, yeah, it's primed for open for manipulation. That this is a more trusting, more open, more engaging person. This is a person who tends to give trust instead of making trust be earned. This is a person who really believes in cooperation, who sees things as part of a team, and they tend to trust others more readily. They also tend to really have optimistic, and they're people who are driven, who really see that if you just pushed enough, worked hard enough, that you can do pretty much whatever you set your mind to. Unfortunately, toxic people love that because they are going to use that. They're going to piggyback on top of your determination, your perseverance, your, pull yourself up by the bootstrap mindset. They're going to piggytail themselves or piggyback themselves onto that by implicating that whenever they fail, that you should just wait longer. You should trust that they're going to try again. I love that word, try. What's try actually mean? In a case of a narcissist, try means nothing. It means nothing's going to change. They're just wanting you not to change. They want you not to disappear. But so they end up, they piggyback on your belief that change is possible. And then they basically are future faking. They future fake that change is going to happen, that if you just wait long enough and that you trust long enough, that they're going to end up being better, doing better, or whatever just happened won't happen again. And unfortunately, that's all a lie. You don't know that, but because in your case, when it comes to you, your word means something. So when you say it, it's not a lie. And there's where one of our errors is, that we make the assumption that because we are who we are, we assume others are like us as well. We assume that there's a similarity, that we can trust, because we can trust in ourselves, that we can trust what this person says to us. And all of that, unfortunately, sets us up to be very, very vulnerable for abuse. So, like I said, they're looking for someone who's in a transition, a major transition, which we all are at some point of our lives. Maybe you moved across the country. Maybe you're in a new job. Maybe there's been a loss in your family or a loss in your life. Maybe there's been a big relationship transition in your life. Maybe your kids just left home for the first time. Maybe you're somebody who is really trying to get yourself around, and that you just had this massive kind of aha that you had an addiction and you're trying to live a sober life, but you're in this transition and they're looking for that. That makes you vulnerable for them to prey on you. So let's talk about the abuse tactics. And I also will make sure to take your questions. I know if you're new to my live, I'm thrilled that you're here. My name is Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a mental health clinician. Actually, I'm a retired psychologist. I have over 20 years of counseling practice. I used to be a private practitioner. These days now I primarily write, I create content. I also run support groups, and I have retreats, which I'm super excited about. We just wrapped up our first retreat in Mexico. We have 2 more this year planned, one for men only in September and another one for women only in October. And I'll be happy to talk more about that. In fact, I plan to go live with Ro and Lisa, my co-partners in this company, Wellness Recovery Retreats, which if you want to check out the retreats, the webinar is now live. I'm sorry, the webpage is now live. So if you check out is Wellness Recovery Retreats with an S, Wellness Recovery Retreats.com for information about all three retreats. And yeah, I'm so glad that I'm able to be here and do this for those who find that therapy are really hard. I do, by the way, offer, Kelly, a really low-cost community. It's $15 a month. You have direct access to me. You get the incredible support of the community where they can actually give you feedback. You can talk about real-life problems in the moment with them. And you get a weekly subscription from me of additional exclusive content that I don't post anywhere. That includes an audio clip. I also give like questions, exercises, other resources, things to consider, definitions. So if you're looking to kind of take this up a level, consider becoming a subscriber. You can see that as coffee.com. So control tactics. How do they control us? Well, like I said, at first it's really subtle. Like I've been reviewing my own history and realized that coercive control, and for those of you who are not for sure what that term it is, let me actually read it. I have a website page pulled up because it's now being criminalized in the UK, and there are, I think, 4 states who have, I think, in family court implications around coercive control. So coercive control is the act or a pattern of assaults, threats, humiliation, intimidation, or other abuse that's used to harm, punish, or frighten their victim. Now, when I hear that, I think, oh, that should be super obvious. I should know when someone's coercively controlling me. I actually didn't. I didn't know I was being coercively controlled. I bet you're being coercively controlled, and if you're in a toxic relationship and you don't know that you are either. So how does it show up? It's Lisa in the podcast next week on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse gives a great example. It's like this. It's when you say, like, say, for example, you're going in for a hair color and you ask your partner, hey, I'm thinking about coloring my hair blonde, or I'm going to color my hair brunette or whatever. And they say, do you care? Do you have an opinion? And they say, no, whatever, it's your hair or whatever. I don't care. And you come back and you show them your new haircut and they'll say, I really preferred you the other way. Or I preferred it before you cut it, or whatever it is that you did. So you get this ding against you. So you think, oh, I kind of asked it for their opinion, and then they didn't really give it. I thought it was really okay. And now I'm finding out that it's not okay. So let me give you an example how it happened to me, and it's really dramatic. It's actually quite uncomfortable. And why I didn't see it as abusive, I think I'm puzzled because the me I am today, if anybody pulled this on me or like, hell no, I'm out of here, I just would have immediately left. But so what happened to me was, as many of you guys know, and if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, I wear wigs. After my 3rd baby, I had a massive hair loss. I was very sick with that pregnancy, and the consequence was I had a massive hair shed that was permanent. And so for a long time, I did other strategies, but after Brad died, I just started to wear wigs. I felt like, you know what, the other strategies are costing me more hair, making the situation worse. I don't feel comfortable in them. I want to do something that's a little freeing, a little something, that I feel greater. I can feel more myself, gives me more options. But I felt a lot of shame. And for anybody who's not experienced a hair loss, and I know many men go through this, it's devastating. You'd think that it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it really, imagine someone told you you're going to have to shave your head off and it's never growing back. And you're going to have to figure out how you're going to face the world that way. Like, how are you going to go out to work? What are you going to say when people stare at you? A point. Or how about how many people ask you if you have cancer? I mean, you start like all these things, or it's just you start to realize as a woman, and I'm sure even as a man, but I've not been a man, so I don't know what that feels like. But as a woman, you start to realize a huge piece of how we define our beauty is by in our hair. How much hair we have, what color it is, how long it is, how we keep it, what kind of shape it's in. All of this really has it defines beauty, defines our sense of self. And so when it happened, I felt absolutely devastated. Like I didn't want to go out in public. I stopped really going out in public. I started having nightmares. That's how upsetting it was to me. I was having signs of PTSD. I started having nightmares. Everything that I did that was in the sun or under a light, I started becoming very aware of. It immobilized me. It immobilized. I even had thoughts of just not wanting to be here for a while. So it was awful. It was terrible. So I cope with it. By the way, that happened in around 2001, 2002, and then my late husband passed away in 2015. So that gives you the sense of span of years. So I'm living with this, trying to get on top of it, trying to feel more comfortable about myself and feel more accepted. And like I said, when he passed away, I thought, I'm going to go to wigs. I'm just going to, I don't quite know anything about it. I'm ashamed about it. In fact, I hid the first purchase in a bag and walked out of the store. I mean, I was so like ashamed. I was married 31 years to my first husband before he passed away. So I start this new life and I'm dating, and that becomes tricky. When do you tell somebody that you're dating that you wear wigs? And not all wigs like stay on your head very well. You can tape them down or you can clip them, but they can move or get jostled. I mean, certainly, do you sleep in them? No, most of us don't, because you're going to wear them out. So you need to tell somebody that you're dating at some point that you wear wigs. So here's what happened. So my ex and I had already met. We had our first great date that went really well. And we were getting ready for the second date, and we were long distance dating. So that meant that I had to fly to his hometown. That meant that I would be staying in some hotel, and we had to figure out all of that out. And I knew there was a chance that he would at some point see me with my wig. And I planned to wear a cap. I bought a cap specially so that if that moment happened where I'd have that moment, that I would then wear a cap, and that would be my strategy. So I text him just before I'm leaving for the date to tell him about this, so that it's not a surprise. I just didn't want that awkward moment. And he texts back and says, "If I'm tired, and if you can't be honest with me, then there's really no reason for this relationship." So he's implying that me not going without a wig is not being honest, and that I need to do this in order for us to preserve the relationship. And he's really making this an either or thing, that it's me exposing myself, being very vulnerable, and keeping the relationship, or losing the relationship and preserving my dignity. That's how it felt to me. Now, remember what I just told you is that they pick when you're vulnerable, and they pick certain personality styles. Well, I was very vulnerable because I had just lost my husband. I was desperate to be in another relationship. Yes, I said that word intentionally. I was desperate. Thank you so much for that gift. I was desperate. Really wanted that relationship. This was the first guy, and I had met. I say date, it really wasn't dates. I call first dates meets and greets. I had like 40 to 50 meets and greets, lots of failure. I was realizing there were a lot of really great men, but they really weren't great for me. And this was the first person I had met that I didn't know about love bombing, that I had felt such camaraderie with, such similarity. We're same stage of life, looking for the same thing. I had never met somebody so incredible. So my investment was really high. So you know what I did? I exposed myself and let him see me, when, by the way, not even my late husband ever saw me without some kind of a hairpiece on. Not ever. Not ever. Now today, I go regularly around the house without it. Today, my people who are super close to me have seen me without my wig. These days, I embraced it because I'm not going to be any more ashamed about something that I have no control, that is just a part of me, But at that time, that was a really devastating experience and a very, very big deal. And that was a powerful experience of how he coercively controlled me. Now, the me today, I would say, I would say, F you, I'm out of here. I would say, you know what? That's pretty sick request. You don't understand what you're asking. That's unreasonable to put me in a spot like that. And if the relationship isn't any meaningful to you, then I'm not going to stick around for it. But like I said, I was very vulnerable and in a high transition spot. And chances are, if you've been in a similar place, and this is the thing, it's easy for us to say victims are victims. Victims almost ask for it because they're victims. No, no, no. I'm telling you, every single one of you, if this has not happened to you, I thank God that it hasn't. But there will come a time in your life, unfortunately, where you're going to be vulnerable and you'll be in a transition and you might be susceptible to someone start to put what my dad used to call putting the screws to you. That's what he did. He put the screws to me. So I agree. Someone just said it's amazing how they can see it a mile away. Yeah, exactly. They can spot your vulnerability a mile away. It's just really, really amazing. And Karen, I don't know what your no way is. I hope your no way it never happens to you. Absolutely. I want that for you. But I also want to warn us, all of us, that these transitions can hit in an unexpected way and take you into unexpected places, and that you may not realize or even recognize at the time that you're that vulnerable. So be very, very aware. So coercive control, and I'll talk more about it next week too, because I think it's a really important topic, doesn't necessarily, when they say assault, threat, humiliation, and intimidation, it doesn't mean that it's overtly assaultive. Doesn't mean it's overtly threatening, doesn't mean it's an overt humiliation or even overt intimidation. My ex, I believe, and now I am a psychologist, so I am licensed to diagnose. On the other hand, psychologists don't diagnose family. So I'm not licensed to diagnose him, but based upon symptomology, I would say he's a psychopathic or a sociopathic narcissist, which meant he enjoys being sadistic and cruel. He would even admit that he enjoyed being sadistic and cruel. So that was an example where he wanted to degrade me. He actually was looking to humiliate me and wanted me to be exposed in a very, very vulnerable way. Now, so it can look in a lot of different ways. So let me give you some other examples of coercive control. It can be somebody who says, you know what? You say to somebody, hey, I'm going to go out with my girlfriends tonight. Are you okay with that? And they're like, absolutely. You should go out. You've been home way too long. And then you go out and they text you 40 times. They don't give you a minute of independence. They bombard you and ruin the experience. So they say one thing and then they do something else that indicates that they actually don't mean what they just said. Or it can be, for example, this whining, kind of this petulance, the fussing, the constant indicating that they're not quite happy. I know a lot of people experience this around physical intimacy in relationship, where they feel like they can't dare say no because the pressure starts to heat up, and then they feel like they have to give in order to keep this person happy, in order to keep the family or the relationship running smooth. That's another example of coercive control. Or it could be where you actually are you're told that you're going to have joint account and you're going to share everything, and then you suddenly find that this person's asking for receipts. They're questioning about what you spent and why you spent it. They're making you justify everything that you do. Here's another one that happened to me. I found that I became uncomfortable having privacy, that if I was outside away from him, he'd want to know what I did, who I talked to, especially if I made a phone call. He'd want to know what happened on that phone call. It just got easier not to do anything independently of him. It just got too tough because of the intense questions. It just felt like that's a form of intimidation. So watch out for coercive control. And it's very, very subtle. And how you experience is, you feel like you have less and less freedom, like you're incrementally being put into some kind of a jail and being stripped of your rights. You don't even know it. Often you end up thinking, I'm just doing this because I love them, or because I want to keep things easy, or just because this person says it bothers them. This is another one. I had a very close friendship, a very, very close friendship. And my ex told me when we were married, by the way, I also found that weird. I refer to my ex because he's my ex now, but he wasn't my ex when this happened. Some people came in and like, well, if he's your ex, why did you do that? No. I was married to him at the time. He wasn't my ex then. So just know, everybody who's listening to me, if I refer to him as my ex, it's because I'm not married to him now. He's my ex today, but I was married to him. But anyway, so he told me early on in the relationship that one reason why he was a serial cheater was because he felt threatened by my close relationship with this friend, and that it was putting him at risk of acting out. Now, what person ever wants to hear your partner is going to cheat on you if you don't give up something? I don't. I want my partner loyal to me. So what did I do? I backed off that relationship. So it can be like that. It can be really subtle where they play the sympathy card, or they make you feel bad after the fact, and like, so you regret your decision. You may find that you just lose control, or they make it difficult, like they sabotage. It could be like, here's another one that happened. He controlled my sleep. So he knew I needed a lot of sleep. I was really clear about that. So when I would go to bed, and I'd even say, hey, I'm going to bed, he would stay up watching TV in the same room. He wouldn't leave the room. He would stay watching the TV in the same room. And then he would not turn the volume down. And then he'd watch it till 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. And then he would set the alarm for 6 a.m. in the morning, even though we didn't need to go anywhere. We had no appointments until like 9 or so. And I was a fast dresser. It took me only half an hour to get ready. He would set the alarm at 6 a.m. and let it go off over and over and over till I woke up, so that I only was getting a good 3 hour of night sleep. And he did that night after night after night. Now, how could he survive that? I have no idea. But I knew he was undermining me and ruining my sleep. And then he would run me all day. We wouldn't have breakfast. We wouldn't stop for lunch. And we wouldn't stop until finally 5 p.m. at night to finally eat for our one big meal of the day. So he was controlling my food. He was controlling my privacy. He was controlling my relationships. He was controlling even my sleep. And I didn't feel like I could exercise in front of him because I had to do it in the room with him because he wasn't safe. I mean, you can see how my world, literally, I was being put into a tight box to stay safe. And I didn't know it. I didn't know that everything I did, every move that I was making, I was relinquishing more and more of my freedoms. That's what coercive control looks like. So watch out for it. It is really, really deadly. And there's some questions you can ask yourself. If you feel like you have to get permission, you feel like doing things the way that you want to do them is going to be too costly, if you feel like you are never quite in control over the things that are most basic to you, if you feel like this person is always invested in all your actions, all these, like even what you dress and wear. He had an opinion about how I folded and hung my clothes. Seriously, who really cares? What person, especially what man who's allowing his partner to take care of some household stuff, cares how they hang their own clothes? I'm not talking about how I hung his clothes. I'm talking about how I hung my clothes. I mean, it's one thing if he says to me, hey, I'd really prefer you hung my shirts like this or using this hanger. I get that. No problem. That's reasonable to me. But to tell me that I should hang mine in a certain order, in a certain color, in a certain way, facing a certain direction, and I'm being legitimately serious, is what he said. What? I mean, really? I wasn't even allowed to put groceries in the back of the car. He wouldn't let me do that. I had never in my life, I grew up on a dairy farm, never been allowed, never been told I shouldn't do manual labor. Hey, my family applauded if I pitched in and helped the family farm. And suddenly I'm now, not even to lift a bag and put it in the back of the car. And if I did, he would say, oh, you're not letting me help you. Aren't you going to ever let me help you? I mean, it was just ridiculous and like that. But so what I'm pointing out by these examples is that it can come in a lot of different directions. It can come in like somebody's saying, shaming you. It could be that they're saying they're trying to help you. They can even say it would be they're trying to make life better for you, or they're watching out for you, or they know best for you. It doesn't have to be this aggressive, attacking, hostile, overt way for it to be considered coercive control. It could be this just very subtle pressure that you're feeling that you can't just show up as yourself. That you can't, for example, go color the hair the way you want to color it, or have it the length that you want to have it, or wear the clothes that you really want to wear. Those are examples of how someone is coercively controlling you. So Brenda just said he would check the treadmill to see if I exercised. Exactly. Great example. Great example. Yeah, I knew somebody else that actually would check their partner's mileage on the car to see if they went where they said they went. Now, this isn't a person who cheated either. This person had never cheated on them. It's just that's how much control their partner was exerting over top of them. So I want to start taking your questions, and feel free to ask me any question you want. It doesn't have to be on this topic, but I want to. So I know some of you already asked, and if you're still here, I'd love you to circle back and ask me again. And yeah, I'm looking at what causes this disorder and what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. Okay, so I'll start with those two questions, but please feel free to ask me any questions. As I said, for those of you who don't know, I'm a retired psychologist with 20 years of counseling experience these days. I call myself a mental health specialist these days, but I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy, and I'm just so thrilled that you're here. So what's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? Both of them would be considered an antisocial personality disorder in the DSM-5. So they both are the same when it comes to diagnosis with a personality disorder, but they're actually different. I would think probably the premier expert on this, if you want to research this yourself, look into Dr. Robert Hare's material, H-A-R-E, Dr. Robert Hare. He has probably the best stuff out there. Also, Martha Stout is another person who's written a lot on this topic, the differences between psychopaths and sociopaths. But here's how I understand them to be different. And I do think that they're different. I do think that there are differences. A sociopath is someone who typically has been created. In other words, it's been due to environmental exposure and experiences and trauma and losses. It's not trauma exclusively. Please don't think these people are just broken, traumatized people. It's more than that. It's more than that. But they're very volatile. They have a mercurial mood shifts, which means that they shift on a dime. They can go from being charismatic, laughing with you, thinking everything's wonderful, and then literally the next moment be in an all-out rage with you. It could be either hot rage or a cold rage, but they flip fast. Their moods are super shift. That's why we call it mercurial. They shift super, super fast. They are ruthless. They have no conscience. Anything that they can consider as a possibility, they are willing to do if it achieves their means. They are willing to break the law. They're highly deceptive, extremely charismatic, and they do tend to break the law a lot. They also tend to be narcissistic as well. And so they see themselves as superior to other people. They see themselves as superior human beings. Their downfall is that all of that's not great, but they're impulsive. This is how they differ from a psychopath. They're very impulsive. They tend to be driven by state, meaning like how they feel is what drives their moods and drives their behavior. So if they're in a great mood, then it's all party time for everybody. But if they are in a very rageful mood, suddenly something goes wrong and they get enraged, then you better get out of there because they're super dangerous. So that's the sociopath. A psychopath tends to be made. They tend to be formed that way. It's more nature. If you talk to parents of psychopaths, they'll say this child was odd. They didn't laugh at the things that other people laughed at. They sort of struggled to be emote well. They just kind of felt maybe even a little robotic. They didn't show a lot of emotions. They tend to be a little they feel weird. They feel strange to us because they're not as connected, emotionally connected to themselves and how they feel, and they don't connect to other people very easily. So they feel like, both groups, sociopaths and psychopaths, have a problem with empathy, low or no empathy, but sociopaths actually are empathic. They just use their empathy instrumentally against you. So in other words, they know what you're feeling, and they use it against you. Whereas a psychopath may not know what you feel, may not even understand what you're feeling, may not be able to relate to you very well. They're like it's like their empathy is broken, and they're kind of empty. They're just sort of cold, logical, calculating, empty people that are kind of in some ways not very human. They don't have much of a conscience. They don't have a much more of a moral code. Their code is to themselves. They're very egocentric, and they too think they're very superior. So they tend to see themselves as better than other people. But that's in a nutshell the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. But can I explain the difference between ASD level 1 and NPD? And is it common for people with ASD to cheat on their partners or seek outward validation? So I'm assuming, Kamish, that you're talking about autistic spectrum disorder, not antisocial personality disorder, because whenever I see the A, it starts to throw me off. Because ASPD, antisocial personality, yeah, it would be ASPD, I guess. Anyway, acronyms. Yeah. Okay. So level 1, I'm not for sure what a level 1 ASD is versus other levels. That part I can't speak to. But so autism is a neurodivergence. It's actually it's a neurological difference in the way that people tend to deal with things in several different realms. They tend to have problems with, there tends to be language issues, neuromuscular motor difficulties or differences. There tends to be communication or language problems, and there also tends to be sensory stimulation issues. And so, oh, it's Asperger's versus non-Asperger. Okay, so because of these big four areas of differences, they also tend to have some issues with empathy, which is where they're kind of a crossover with NPD, is they both have empathy issues. Or ASPD though, or I'm sorry, ASD, however, empathy is impaired around the affect. They tend to like not always know what other people they feel. It's not that they don't feel, but they don't always know what they're feeling, and they don't always can't because they problems recognizing the social cues of other people's feelings. They sometimes don't always recognize what other people are feeling. So there's a disconnect on that. But you're going to find the intention is completely different. So a person with NPD, a narcissist, they may know how you feel. They may recognize that. They actually are very good at what David Schnarf calls as mind mapping. I don't know if you've heard of that. That's the ability to kind of anticipate what other people are thinking and doing. Narcissists are actually quite good at that. They're probably better at that than you and I are. So whereas an autistic person is not good at mind mapping, they would really struggle with that. They wouldn't be able to get into your mind very well because they struggle to understand the rules of social engagement. So the intention is really, really different between autism and narcissism. Autism is a deficit, it's a deficiency in these certain areas where, and so is narcissism, but narcissism is more of an interpersonal problem. They're having problems with relationships and the way in which they engage, where autism is a more kind of a, it's a kind of holistic problem that it impacts many different areas, and it impacts each person kind of uniquely in different ways. By the way, those of you who guys don't know, I am autistic. All my sons are also autistic. So it's something new to me. I got diagnosed at 57, although once somebody told it to me and said, you know, I think you're an autistic woman, like it was like for me, the lights went on. I suddenly, everything made sense. All the things in which I felt different or struggled with or had, and you're like, well, you're a psychologist, you have empathy. Yeah, but I'm my affective empathy is not always strong, but my cognitive empathy is super strong. And if you think about it this way, and I have significant social issues, social cue issues, which is why I became a psychologist, because I really wanted to understand humans. I wanted to understand people. So I want to understand that I figured there are rules to engagement, and I want to understand what the rules are. So I went into psychology to understand myself and understand other people. So I'm very, very good at reading people because I've made that my life, career, my choice. I also am a trauma survivor, so that will make you really good at reading people too, because you're watching for danger. But so it is interesting how something that I am kind of deficient in, I also have now used as a strength, used as a super strength. So I hope that helps. Now, the second part of your question is, does people with autism cheat on their partners or seek outward validation? No, typically not. No, not at all. I would say that's a narcissist. So here's the other thing. Narcissism and autism can co-occur. You can have both. So it may be that you're interacting with somebody who has a level 1 ASD, but they're also narcissistic. And yeah, a lot of narcissists do cheat, and because they're looking for supply, but autism is not. There's nothing about autism that is outwardly validating seeking. It's just not. If anything, they don't like too much contact with other people is hard. One, because they don't understand what's going on, and that makes them feel bad or awkward or, not good. And secondly, a lot of autistic people find certain types of interactions really uncomfortable, like making good eye contact is often hard. If you ever notice, I'm looking all over the place. The other thing that's really hard is that they also find that chit chat is really hard. They don't really understand chit chat. It just, for me, feels like chalk on fingernails on chalk. I hate it. So I just don't see them as outwardly seeking validation. So I hope that answers your questions. Did you consider Dexter to be a psychopath or a sociopath? I consider Dexter to be a psychopath. You remember how his dad taught him how to engage with people, and he was also like making all these rules for himself, and he would actually kind of like rotely work things through to sort of figure out how to blend better. He really struggled, and he struggled with romantic relationships. Yes, he had them, but he struggled with them. So Dexter also wasn't mercurial. He wasn't like, so think a better example of a sociopath would be like like Breaking Bad with some of the cartel people, or even think of Ozark, the cartel in Ozark, whenever the main guy Marty didn't do exactly what they wanted, or even they would just like blow up on him and do these really unexpected, scary things. That's a great example of a sociopath. They're unpredictable. Of the two, the more dangerous is the sociopath, not the psychopath. Believe it or not. I know we tend to, psychopath has this kind of connotation of, ooh, very, very scary, but actually it's the sociopath who's the scarier one because they're unpredictable and impulsive. I'd love to see you in there, Kelly. That would be awesome. Yeah, please check that out. So there was another question of my partner says always calling me a victim anytime I said I'm hurt and confused. Is this narcissism? I can't tell you, Marissa, that that's narcissism, but it definitely is toxic. That definitely is not supportive, and what's happening there is you're being gaslit. So whenever you are bringing up an issue and your partner then comes back, instead of being supportive and sympathetic and caring about whatever the issue you're experiencing, and then they just call you a name and make you feel ridiculous for having that experience and making you feel bad for having that experience, that's gaslighting. So certainly toxic behavior, certainly not loving behavior. I wouldn't see that as somebody who's really trying to like support you and care about you. I'd see that as somebody who's overtly trying to harm you. So the question came in is, are they curable? Who are we talking about as being curable? Sociopaths, psychopaths, or narcissists, or autism? Because we've talked about all three of those groups today. So let me know which group you're wondering if they're curable. And CPTSD, who's talking about CP? Oh, somebody asked, what's the difference between obsessive compulsive personality disorder versus NPD? So obsessive compulsive personality disorder, I heard that the best example of that is that this is an old movie, a really old movie. But if you want to see what OCPD looks like, go watch Ordinary People. And the Mary Tyler Moore character is a great example of somebody who has obsessive compulsive personality disorder. That's a person who's super, super rigid, who has to control and manage everything, and it has to be done exactly their way. They're always in charge, and they're always like, think of the perfect, I don't like this, I really hate we've done this to this name, but think of the person, a perfect Karen. A perfect Karen would be a great example of OCPD. Yeah. Okay, is narcissism curable? There's a lot of debate on that right now. A lot. I think I would say be safe. I would say we don't have enough research. I do know that neurologically their brain functions differently. A narcissist's brain is overly focused on their own thoughts about themselves and what you think of them. They also have empathy problems. There's actually deficits in the area that has to do related to empathy. They are also show areas that have to do with conscience, and moral regulation is underactive. Now, can you change the way the brain functions once it's fixed and pretty rigid in adulthood? I don't know. I do know that when you change your thinking, you can certainly change the way your brain works, to some degree, not perfectly. We do need medication, but there's no medication to treat this kind of problem. I also know some of the things that they do are under their control. Narcissists are not like machines who are running on some code that they have no like no control over it. They just have to act these things out. No, they know. That's why they turn it on and off. That's why they pull it together when they're around someone important, and then they'll get into the car and then berate you. They behave appropriately. I used to watch my ex. He would turn when he would turn on the charm. It was amazing. He would show up and be the perfect person, perfect partner, perfect friend. It was just incredible how sophisticated he was at doing that. And yet, if he got to be familiar with you, or if he decided that you weren't worth the effort, or he was disgusted with you, or you weren't worth impressing, he could literally switch it right off. Absolutely switch it right off. And I watched him do it. I watched him switch it off, switch it on and off. It was amazing. So that says that there's a piece of this that is under their control, which then that means it's controllable. But they don't control it. Why don't they? Why do a majority, here's the bigger question, why does a majority of them have this ability to actually do or not do something, but then not care enough, or is concerned about how they fit in, or whatever, however you want to define it? Why do they then not do something about it in order for them to be more mainstream and get along with more people? I don't know. I know Lee Hammock personally. I've met him on several occasions. He and I are actually friends. He's said, and sometimes he and I talk a little bit, not a lot, but just we've talked. And he would say he's always battling his own narcissism all the time. He's always battling it. And that it's a choice for him all the time whether or not he behaves narcissistic or not. So it does make you wonder, and he's been in 6+ years of therapy, and I think he goes weekly. So it's definitely something he takes very, very seriously. And he would say he's not cured. So it makes you wonder if it is really curable. I don't know. I definitely think therapy, the right kind of therapy, can help, but not every. Here's the thing. Just because I said this, I don't want all of us who's ever been in a relationship or in a relationship with one now thinking, if I can just get my partner to go to therapy, then things would get better. No, they have to want that. People who have these problems have to have some experience, some dark night of the soul where they really, truly want to be different. They have to want to change, and they have to then do the deep, hard work at looking at their own wishes or their own issues and wishes and needs and drives to be different. And they have to be very, very honest, like brutally honest with themselves and with their therapist. And how many narcissists do you know has the capacity or the willingness to do any of that? In fact, there is this belief, and I really wish that we would stop it everywhere. There's this belief that if we could get people into therapy, they would be fixed. No, I'm a psychologist. I conducted therapy for over 20 years. Sending someone to therapy does not fix them. Therapy is not a magic wand. It requires, this is what a person has to have for therapy to be effective. You have to want it. You have to be willing to do the hard work of digging into yourself. You have to do the hard work of self-reflection and looking at what you do wrong. You have to have the endurance to be able to willingly be vulnerable and endure shame with the therapist, to look at things that are deeply uncomfortable, deeply embarrassing. And then you have to do the harder work of having the discipline to go out and be different on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute level. All these things have to be present for therapy to work. It is nothing that happens by osmosis. There's no magical word a psychologist or a psychiatrist can ever say that will make someone be different. It just doesn't work that way. I wish it did, but it doesn't. I can't tell you the number of clients that came into my office that just thought because they stepped over the door that somehow they were going to be a different person. They weren't, because they didn't do any of the differences. It didn't make any of the changes. They didn't come in and then they didn't expose themselves in a vulnerable way and allow me to know them in a way that would be life-changing. And then they didn't go out and they didn't do anything with what we said in the session. And as a result of that, nothing changes. Therapy is not a magic pill. It just isn't. So most narcissists don't change. Just most narcissists don't change. Can being a narcissist make an empath not empathic towards them anymore? Absolutely, Kamish. Absolutely. I used to be empathic and cared about my ex greatly. I deeply was concerned about his life and about how he felt about things. And as the relationship got older and he got really crummy and he was cruel and he was heartless and he hurt me and he betrayed me a lot, I started caring less and less until I didn't really care. My feelings for him also really went flat. I really got apathetic. And actually, I want to tell you that apathy in a toxic relationship is freedom, because then you start to cease to care about their criticism, about their opinion. It really reduces their control over you, because you're not now living for their approval. You're not seeking their validation. It really is, for me, it's the point at which you're ready to leave. And, or certainly psychologically to leave. Now, I know not everybody can actually leave for lots of complicated reasons, but it does give you tremendous freedom when you stop being concerned about what they think and feel. If you're a safe adult, but as adult there, there's no unreverse. Okay, I'm jumping in this conversation. If they worry so much about how you think and see them, how does that not drive them towards better behavior? Yeah, that boggles your mind. I agree, Phoenix. It does boggle my mind too, why they don't care. They do care to the degree that they want good public opinion, but they don't care about how. It comes back to the fact that we have to remember that. Here, I'm even going to back up further. Sometimes I do that. Sorry about that. So, there's a theory of psychology that sees us as not as how we recognize each other as people. So, take for example an infant. An infant doesn't recognize the mother as an individual person separate from themselves. They see the mother as part of them. They see themselves as part of this unit, and they were once upon a time in her body and a part of her and growing inside of her, and they were attached to her. They were once upon a time part of her. So our growth, think of everybody's growth as on a continuum between symbiosis and parasitic relationship to full autonomy, full separateness, full individuals. From the infant to a fully defined, fully separated, fully functional human being. Now, the problem is psychologically, we don't ever fully get to a fully functional, fully separate human being. We get stuck somewhere along the line. That's what developmental psychology thinks. We get stuck. So the degree that we can't recognize other people as people with their own thoughts and their own opinions and their own desires means that we still see them partly as an object to us. It's like we're connected, they're part of us, and that we can use them as part of us. Narcissists and other personality disorders, unfortunately, have a severe emotional developmental delay in that they don't recognize you as a person, a partner, as separate from themselves. And no, it's not the mother's fault, it's no one's fault. It's complicated. Maybe it's everybody's fault and nobody's fault at the same time. It could be something that went wrong in the person's personality. It can be their sensitivity and temperament. It can be maybe there's some event that happened in their life around them. It could be their genetics. It could be, it's loads and loads of, maybe their dad wasn't around enough. Maybe their siblings had a medical issue. It could be lots of reasons for this to go wrong. It's not one thing. When we make it one thing, we've way oversimplified it. It's never that simple. But for some reason, we don't always fully get to a place where we allow people to be fully separate human beings with their own thoughts and their own opinions and their own wishes and their own drives. Instead, we try to control people. And when we control people, we essentially have made them an extension of ourselves. And when that happens, then we see them as an object. That's why we call it object relations. We have narcissists see you as an object. So in one way, they want that world to think positively of them, but they see you personally as a part of them and an object, and they don't really care about how you feel or experience what they do to you. In fact, they see you as your job is to keep them happy. Always keep them happy. Can I talk more about that, about the medical issues? Like what kind of medical issues are you thinking of? What I'd love to do, because I'm down to 7 minutes, I do love her name too. I love the name she picked. Phoenix is great. So this, if you guys have been enjoying this and you really are finding this helpful, please consider becoming part of my exclusive community, which is where we meet once a week for an hour together as a group and talk about these issues further. We also read books together, talk about that. You have access to my online course, First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist, where you can actually get the course with all the videos. And you have access to my book. There's just a whole lot. You get access to past webinars. It just, everything kind of comes with it. Gives you a weekly newsletter, 2 of them actually, 2 weekly newsletters, community support, and then also a group, kind of live group support. So if you'd like to learn more about that, please go to the link in my bio where you can find out about my different levels of subscription. So Muriel asked, and Muriel, I so loved seeing you and I love talking to you so much. What's wrong with the people who've been sexually abused, someone that's vulnerable? How could they hurt someone just to get their needs met? I think it takes a whole variety of situations to happen for that to happen. There is kind of in our human reality levels of what's taboo, what we think is normal to participate in and what's not normal. And there's certain things we just know that are wrong. For example, cannibalism is wrong. We know that it's wrong, and it's really uncomfortable to consider that, even when maybe our life depends on it. I just got to watch the movie on the group of soccer players who went down in the Andes, and that they were actually starving to death, and they had to lean into the dead that way in order to survive. In fact, there was even a powerful moment in the movie where they gave permission that if they were to die, they wanted their bodies, their selves, to sustain the rest of the group. I mean, it's powerful. It makes me even teary to think about that. But it's very hard for us to cross these big boundaries like that, these big taboos. And one of the taboos is not to have sexual relationships with family members, with people who are relationally close to us. But unfortunately, when we get into a practice of breaking those boundaries, of moving closer and closer into areas like that, where we start to think that we justify it, or we've seen it as a model, maybe there's not been a protection for us around those areas, or others have normalized it for us, we start to then think it gets easier. And once you start crossing taboos like that, it gets easier to cross them again and across them again. And then what once started as maybe a fluke or it's an outlying experience becomes a habit, which then becomes part of your character. And that's what I get so concerned about, some of the behaviors that we are normalizing online and some of the things that we have access to these days, that we are normalizing what should be kind of seen as potentially dangerous behavior. We're normalizing as normal and as acceptable and as what people should engage in. And I also think that's one reason why the genders are struggling so much with roles, who's responsible for what, who owes what, whom what, even around things like physical intimacies, because so much has gotten normalized and it's become okay to use people in certain ways that are just unreasonable. Really unreasonable. We've dehumanized people. When we dehumanize them, it becomes very easy to then utilize them in very dangerous way. And thank you for this. I got these on Etsy. A lot of stuff that you see me wear, I get from Etsy. I just love to support local artists or global artists' work. So another thing I really want to tell you guys about, the wellness recovery retreats.com is up. You can learn about Strong and Unstoppable. Strong and Unstoppable is going to happen in October. It's for women. So it's going to be limited to 27 women. If you're looking to have an experience where you understand why you're struggling with the way that you're interacting with the world, your level of confidence. So think about this. So let's take a golf, someone who plays golf. They start to hit wrong. They can't play par. They start to really struggle. Maybe their swing's off and they end up getting struck. Maybe it's because they got injured somehow. And then the more they start to overthink it, the worse that it gets. What we're going to do at this retreat with women is we've connected. We have a partnership with an equestrian center. We're going to be doing equine therapy, because horses, interestingly enough, and it's a grooming experience. You won't be riding horses, but it's a grooming experience. Horses are a perfect mirror. So they reflect, because they're a prey animal and they're also pack animals. They're very good at reflecting what they see you do. I actually had an experience of it. And I'll tell you, the information I got about me in that experience blew me away. So if you would like to grow your confidence, understand why you're struggling interpersonally, even though you're trying to heal after being in a narcissistic relationship, and you want to take it up a step, please consider coming to Strong and Unstoppable. It's October 3rd through the 6th. The website on Wellness Recovery Retreats is live. The other one is for men. So if you're a man who's been victimized by a female, you're really struggling to understand what happened. Maybe you're feeling disempowered. Maybe you feel like you can't even talk about it, like it's been an emasculating experience. Check out Unleash Your Potential. This is for 20 guys. It's going to be a very small group. We're going to have 20 guys, and we're going to help understand What red flags did you miss? How can you find a more powerful way, a more confident way, a more certain way to be able to enter back into the world, knowing that you can truly identify red flags and toxic women, toxic individuals? How do you connect with other men in a way that feels safe and empowering? So if you're feeling isolated, or you're feeling like you're not quite healing well, or you feeling like you really would like to understand better what happened in that relationship so that you don't do it again, please, I would love you to go to the men's conference in September. It's September 19th through the 21st. It's called Unleash Your Potential. Both of those are on the website called wellnessrecoveryretreats.com. And if I know maybe some of you who have gone to Rising Strong 2024, Rising Strong 2025 has already been scheduled. We're already booking. So we're booking for the one in Mexico in February. So be sure, if you want to go, you need to get your spot, because I think we're like a quarter of the way booked already for that one. It was incredible. The videos and the photos are going to be coming out soon about it. It was just really, really amazing. It exceeded my expectations. I saw women change, like in front of me change. It was incredible. So if you're really looking like, I've been doing the groups, and I've read the book, and I've been in coaching, and I just really need something more, please consider coming to one of my retreats. It's with like Lisa Sonni, Rosanna Faye with Roller Coaster of Love. It's amazing. Really, really amazing. So you guys, I need to wrap it up, because I'm going to hop over to my group and hang out with my group now for the next hour. But I really love being here. Come back next week. We're going to talk more about control tactics, how to recognize them, how to handle them, what to do if it's happening to you. So I really appreciate that you're here. Oh, I'm so glad that you joined. Yeah, Brenda, you're going to be part of the Healing Strong group coaching. I'm super excited. There's a few spots for that left too. So if you want to do group coaching, live 12-week group coaching, I'm almost closed for the March 28th. I think we have 1 or 2 more spots left, but we have 12 spots for the April 18th. April 18th, you can work with me live each week, homework, reflective questions. It's really intense. It really takes your healing up a level. I would love to have you be a part of that. You can check that also out on my website. The retreat that you're talking about that passed was in February. It's going to be again in next February, and the website's up. It's up for Wellness Recovery Retreats. You can find it on my webpage at Kerry McAvoy PhD. Everywhere, all of this is also on my webpage, Kerry McAvoy PhD. All right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. I will be back next week. And yeah, the reviews on the last one were through the roof, 5 stars. Yeah, and in fact, the reason it's booking so fast is because the people who win are booking again. In fact, before we even were 1 week out, we were already a quarter. Let's see, we had half of the group already sold. For the half of the group that went to the last one had already bought for the new one. So, I mean, we're expanding it, so we have room, because we're gonna double the size. But yeah, I was shocked and I already know that more people are booking. So the group that hasn't booked, I know many of them are still going to book. So it's incredible. I just really find it incredible. I always find that, Kyle, your anger is interesting. So what kind of job do you do? Kyle, please tell me, what kind of job do you do? Do you feed people? So are you making money off of people's hunger? Maybe you drive a truck and you're feeding people drive for alcoholism, or maybe you're doing something. Or maybe you're working for a big retail company and you're helping people who spend too much and maybe spend money in the wrong direction. So please don't come at me for making money for what I do. Oh, you judge people. Yeah, well, you do it very, very well. All right, you guys. Love how the trolls always come out. They always do. Hey, I'll see you guys next week. I love you very, very much. Bye-bye.